My usual, I know it's appropriate. Councilors, it has been over 2 years now that I've been a public advocate for the therapeutic use of cannabis. This is the 5th time in those 2 years that I've come before this council with the intent of starting a community conversation about cannabis. I've hosted 3 events, both here at City Hall and the local community center. I've written in every local newspaper and been on every local radio station imploring you to do your job as community leaders and take a look at this very, very important issue that requires your attention. I have the smallest handful of general public and media come to these events, but not a single official or media member came to my most recent one, in spite of the fact that I expressed to a few top officials and reporters that I have reason to feel fear for danger. And that is why I've insisted on having it in a public building and asked for someone, anyone, official, to be here. Thank you for allowing me to use the building, but with all due respect, that was the bare minimum of what you ought to have done. The fact that no one came made me realize that I need to step my activism up a notch, so I'm here to explain to you about the violent underbelly of prohibition that you all seem to be ignoring or not understanding. Now, I've done my best to make sure that you understand that the reason I feel such an intense sense of urgency on this issue is because the cannabis plant has life-saving abilities, and people are dying unnecessarily. Not to mention those dying in more pain than need be, or the millions of people living in more pain than they ought to be. I know that many of you have been affected by cancer, and the irony of it being brought up tonight is really priceless, because I really wonder how long we will run for a cure while the government and corporations sit on one. But for now, since you don't seem to care about that part, never mind the life-saving and life-improving aspect of the cannabis plant. Let's talk about the murder and violence and other negative social consequences that happens because of prohibition. In spite of how dangerous and toxic alcohol can be, Americans came to the rational conclusions in the 1930s that prohibiting it created more violence and negative social consequences than simply allowing adults to freely make their own, hopefully educated choices. It only took us 13 years of violent crime to figure that out with alcohol. The war on drugs is now 40 years and 1 week old. The violence that the war on drugs has created far outweighs any negative consequences of drug use, and we can plainly see today that it is not working. Drugs are more readily available to today's youth than they are to you, or they were to youth before Prohibition. Prohibition of alcohol was ended at the urgency expressed by mothers because they started to understand the violence and crime that Prohibition itself creates. Now there are thousands of people being killed down south, and if you don't think that it's not here already, then you are being blatantly ignorant to the facts that are plainly before you. If you want to end drug abuse and violence that drug trafficking creates, then end the war on drugs. The war on drugs is a war on me, and it's because of my efforts to end this war, it's law enforcement officials and violent black market drug dealers that I have to fear the most. I have done a great deal for this community, and I'm tired of feeling as though my community has failed me. So let's be clear now, it's not the average citizen of this community that has failed me or the town, it is the leaders. The media, the active community members, and government officials, especially both elected and appointed. I've done a great, excuse me, I'm so sorry. The media, active community members, and government officials need to do more than the average citizen. And for all of you to not come was beyond politically lackadaisical. It was personally offensive and hurtful to me. I do not feel safe in this town right now, and I do not and have not for years feel like the local police would or could help me or protect me or keep me safe. Angela? This is a sad testament to the community leaders and exemplary of why we are not an all-American city. I refuse to accept ignorance and fear as an excuse for ignoring injustice any longer. The local media, government officials, law enforcement, and community leaders need to look at this issue of cannabis as medicine and the negative effects of prohibition. Thank you.
And I talk for the total council. We will not take blame for not being here. We have lots of things to do, and I've been here before, so let's just not blame us for not taking part. Thank you.
I won't blame you for not doing your job.
Anybody else want to talk? I'm closing the public comments.